All right. Hello, folks. We're just going to wait for everyone to get logged in here from the waiting room and from, I guess, their living rooms and whatnot. So we'll get started here in a second. So hold tight. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you're joining us from today. Welcome to today's webinar, co-hosted by the New York Oracle User Group and Oracle partner Viscosity North America. We've got a great presenter for you today, and I'm not just saying that because he's my boss, but Charles Kim is presenting Automate and Bulletproof Your Data Guard today. So I am expecting to see a lot of great questions from all of you. So yes, this is a live webinar, and yes, it is being recorded for you to revisit later. So feel free to submit your questions in the Q&A field. And that's the Q&A field, not the generic chat field. If you have any questions about logistics of NYOUG, viscosity, or the webinar happening, you can throw those into the chat. But any questions for our speakers should go into the Q&A field, and he will see them as he's presenting. All right, and he'll get to your questions as he can or following the webinar. So once again, today's presentation is co-hosted by Viscosity and the New York Oracle User Group. My name is Monica Lee, and I'm the Marketing Director here at Viscosity, and we are a full Oracle Stack consulting firm, but I'll tell you a little more about us in a moment. But first, I'm going to let Coleman, VP at NYOUG, tell you a little bit about their organization.
Thank you, Monica. So the New York Oracle Users Group was formed in 1984 for the exchange of ideas, assistance, and support among users of Oracle software products. We've been co-hosting with Viscosity since May of 2020. So we've been doing this for quite some time, and we have a lot more webinars on the horizon coming up. In fact, we do have one coming up April 8th with Monica. Not you, Monica.
Not
Monica.
me. Definitely not me.
That's right. So stay tuned for our from our email blast, and you can see all the webinars that are coming up throughout all the user groups throughout the country. Thank you, Monica, and turn it back to you.
Sure. Thank you so much. And don't make sure you follow NYOUG on any of these platforms. Alrighty. Okay, so if you're not familiar with viscosity, welcome. And if you are, hold tight. I know you've probably seen this many times. But at Viscosity, like I said, we are a full Oracle Stack consulting firm with core expertise in Oracle database, including RAC, Oracle Apex. We do perform near zero downtime migrations for our customers. We work on a lot of projects involving performance tuning, high availability, and we've also got decades of experience with infrastructure, including engineered systems. We've been preparing our customers for Oracle Database 23 AI, and we host monthly workshops through orapub.com. On this slide, you can see the three main pillars that Viscosity is built upon, and across the bottom, you can see offerings we have across all three. So if anything here speaks to any pain points you have, any projects coming up that you think you could need help or direction on, please let me know. I would love to get you guys some help, or at least some time with one of our Oracle ACE directors or expert consultants, so we could try to see where we can help you. All right, this page just has a couple of our books that we like to show off. We do have over 25 or 30 books, I think, between our consultants, which is great. And here you'll see some of my colleagues that are part of the Oracle ACE program. Gary Gordhammer here just got promoted to Oracle ACE Director, which is super exciting. But hopefully you've seen some of these folks presenting. They were just at RMUG, the Rocky Mountain Oracle User Group Training Day. And I think most of them will also be at the Utah Oracle User Group Training Day, which is happening later this month. So check that out if you're in the Salt Lake City area.
And Julio just got back as a Oracle ACE associate again, too.
Oh, wonderful. So we've got 6 aces on our team. That's great. Okay, on this slide, you'll just see some of our most popular services. I always like to point out Oracle License Management up on top, just making sure you're paying for exactly what you need, that you're making the most use out of it. We like to make sure that you are taking advantage of your Oracle investment. So check that out. You're also welcome to reach out to us if you think you need to just have like an internal audit or something like that before Oracle. Anything like that, we can help. We can also help streamline the process for any sales for resale of hardware or software. And again, a partner like Viscosity doesn't have to be Viscosity, but partners can normally get you better deals, help you navigate through a lot of the paperwork and requirements, and really take all of the stress out of working with Oracle Direct there. All right. Finally, AuraPub is where we house all of our recordings and slide decks for all of our free webinars. There are paid webinars on there as well for paid members of AuraPub. But if you go log in and create a free membership, you have access to, at this point, I would say hundreds and hundreds of webinars and slide decks, even just from conferences that the guys go to. So there may not be videos for those, but you can at least see what was recently presented at a conference, and you can see our whole team slide decks there. So check it out if you're not there already. If you are, this webinar will be posted there probably around tomorrow or by end of week at least. So definitely check out aurapub.com and see what resources can help you out. Otherwise, head to events.viscosityna.com to see where we're at either in person or virtually next. We always have tons and tons of resources for you in person and virtual, so make sure you go there and check it out. Viscosity does believe very much in knowledge share and community, so we've always got something going on for free at least. All right. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to Coleman to introduce Charles for you today. So quick reminders, if you are just joining us, it is live. Use that Q&A field for Charles to answer any of your questions, and check out the recording at nyoug.org or at AuraPub. All right, all yours, Coleman.
Thank you, Monica. Just a few brief words about Charles. It's going to be a very extensive webinar today, and I don't want to take out much of his time. So here we go. Charles is co-founder and CEO of Viscosity North America, a highly specialized niche consulting organization comprised of industry experts in the Oracle Engineered Systems, RAC, Oracle Cloud, virtualization, and performance tuning. Charles holds certifications in Oracle databases, VMware, Red Hat, and Oracle Linux, and Microsoft, and has over 30 years of Oracle experience on mission and business critical databases. Charles presents regularly at local, regional, national, international Oracle conferences, including IOUG Collaborate, VMworld, RMUG, UK, OUG, New Zealand, etc. I don't want to take up any more of Charles's time. Thank you again for this webinar today, Charles. There's a lot of material and very important and educational stuff coming today. And thank you, Monica, for co-hosting these series of webinars. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Coleman, for the nice introduction, and thank you everybody for joining. Let's see here. I'm gonna share my screen. Let me know if you guys can see this.
Looks good.
All right. So, brief introduction about myself. I've been in the Oracle industry for a very long time, since version 5 days. So that kind of dates me a little bit. Authored 11 books in the ecosystem, but the one in particular that you guys are interested in is that I did write a co-author a book on Data Guard with Oracle product managers. And even though this says 11G, a lot of the stuff that's in here is still relevant, especially when it comes to underlying architecture and internals about Data Guard and how it works. And so, like Monica mentioned, we do have 6 Oracle Aces, and we're super excited that Gary just got promoted from being an Oracle Ace Pro to an Ace Director. And in fact, Craig sent me a message yesterday saying that he did a presentation for another conference, and he said that we have 5 Ace Directors at Viscosity, and it's more than any other company has in the world. And I was like, oh, that might be true. And so I was looking it up, and I think that is very true. And so we do have 5 ACE directors of the 23 in USA, and we're super proud of it. Again, we have a ton of books. Data Guard is one of them. If you haven't been to our website, on our blog pages, we do 12 days of Christmas. We try to do it every year. We may have skipped a few along the way, but we started doing this in 12.2 when it was introduced, and we called it 12 days of 12.2. And then when 18C came out, we did it with 19C. And then we just did one with 23 AI. And what we did was we solicited fellow Oracle ACE pros and ACE directors to contribute this time. I'm going to actually take myself off the video so we can actually go into this. All right. Like Monica mentioned, we do have a lot of our ACEs, and a lot of us are presenting. I think we represent 20 to 25% of a lot of the conferences these days with our ACEs, and we're very, very proud of being able to represent. So also for this presentation, take a picture or this QR code, and we'll be more than happy to send you our slides. All right, so from a Data Guard perspective, Data Guard became super popular. I remember in 9.2, I was actually at Oracle's office, and we're talking about leveraging Data Guard Broker. And that was the very first time I actually heard about Data Guard Broker, and a lot of companies started to adopt it. And so if you look at the evolution of the DBA, we're now in the AI space, and now you'll see a lot more mentions of data architects going towards AI. And in fact, a lot of the ACEs are presenting on AI these days. But thank you for joining. We're focused more on the core technologies of Oracle and a lot of the fundamentals. So if you look at the MAA reference architecture and look at what I highlighted in red, most of the companies out there, I say majority, but most of the companies are in the silver compartment. And so meaning that they have databases with RAC and they have Data Guard. As you go to the gold level, you have Active Data Guard, and we do have a couple of customers that we support that are platinum level MAA, and they leverage Active Data Guard with Golden Gate. But the most important thing is the high availability features like edition-based redefinition. And so it doesn't really matter if you have your databases protected from an HA perspective. You also have to be able to do application releases without downtime and being able to push that across all of your environments. And so EBR is a big part of being able to go from a platinum perspective, right? So when it comes to having a successful Data Guard implementation, and having the right level of patches and being current is very important. It actually starts here. I remember back in the 10.2 days, 10.1, 9.2 days, I used to literally, as an independent contractor, go from one company to another company to another company, just patching Oracle customers, stabilizing RAC, stabilizing Data Guard, enabling customers to achieve the high availability that they're looking for. And so we actually updated this slide recently, and it does cover the newest update when it comes to 19C. If you have not heard, 19C Premier support got extended to 2020, end of 2029, with extended support going all the way to end of 2032. And Premier support for 23 AI is going to go to, the notes say 2031, but we heard through the grapevine that it's even going to go to 2032. And so customers who are on 19C, the Premier support is going to be until end of 2029. And obviously, that is what we call the long-term release. And 23 AI is going to also be the long-term release of Oracle databases. 21C is what we call an innovative release, and the innovative releases do not get extended support. So typically, an innovative release will have Premier support for 2 years, and after that, you're gonna have to go jump to the next either the next innovative release or the next long-term release. From a 19C perspective, we're right now at 19.26. I always encourage our customers to go N-1. So when you're applying RUs, now if you're on Linux, you qualify for the monthly release patches. And so, but typically what I recommend is when a patch newly comes out in January, I tell customers to go N-1 and go 1925 in this case. Now, we're in March. And so we're approaching April. And so since we're so far into the RU, this is when I'll tell customers, you know what, it's okay for you to go 1926 because we're so close. And at that point, still maintain almost N-1. So again, 11.2 was when Oracle introduced this concept of first patch apply at the standby database. And so now the whole idea is that we apply patches on our standby, and this is applying only the binary patches. And then we do a switch over, and then we apply our patches on our primary. And then we also apply the data patch on our primary. And because the data patch is data related, it's going to go propagate to the standby as well, and then we switch back. And so there are certain rules, obviously. You can go from like 11/2/04 July to 11 October PSU, that kind of stuff. You just can't go from 11 to 12, or in our case, 19C to 21C, or 19C or 23C. But you can go between RUs. We still do have customers who are still on 12.1, and it's mainly because a lot of EBS customers are either on 12.1 or 19C. And the customers who don't have that need, or some of them are still on 12.102 of EBS. I brought this checklist. The main one is to start on the 25 21164.1. That has most of the patch level information, and from here you can get access to all the other patches, relevant patches. So 18C was the last release of Oracle RAC for standard edition. And so the migration path or the recommended path for most customers, they were told to go to Enterprise Edition and to go to RAC with that. Well, a lot of customers are still leveraging high availability and leveraging RAC for high availability. And so the other option is, instead of doing RAC for high availability, is to do Data Guard for high availability. And so a lot of our customers who are on standard edition, we're especially the ones that are doing it for high availability versus scalability, we're recommending that they choose an option to go to Data Guard with Enterprise Edition. Or if you're on ODAs, for example, the standard edition high availability is part of the ODA, and that's set up automatically. And here's a feature that's only available on ODA, and it's called Enterprise Edition, EEHA, and it's only available on ODAs as of 1915. So basically, it's almost like RAC Node, but for Enterprise Edition. A lot of customers also ask about, how do I migrate from one endianness to another? Basically, endianness, we have two concepts: small endianness and large endianness. And so Windows and Linux, for example, is the same endianness. And so, but for you to go from Windows to Linux, you can literally take a backup of your database, RMM backup of your database on Windows. You can literally restore that to Linux, and you can use Data Guard to do a graceful switchover. And so the actual mechanism to apply archive logs from Windows to Linux is built into the MRP process. And so if you're trying to use SQL Plus or RMAN to actually apply archive logs, it will fail. And so that's one of the things that we learned through the hard way back eons ago, that the actual capability to apply archive logs through was built in the MRP process. So also in the cloud, you get an extra 9 by leveraging Active Data Guard for autonomous databases. And so if you have autonomous database and you click on the option to enable the Active Data Guard for it, it actually goes from 99.95 to 99.995% uptime. And uptime is very important because the amount of downtime you get, and a lot of the financial customers, a lot of the healthcare customers have really high standards for uptime. And so uptime is attained by things like being able to do rolling upgrades, rack rolling patches to transient logical standby. And so leveraging transient logical standby, you can actually do a full-blown database upgrade. Leveraging EBR, like I mentioned before, flashback, case splice for Linux. And so a typical 99.95% uptime translates to 21.56 minutes a month, 4.38 hours in a year. A lot of customers try to achieve that, and that's very difficult. No, so when in OCI with autonomous, their SLA is literally 2 minutes and 16 seconds per month. Now, 5 nines is what a lot of the credit card industry, a lot of the financial customers, a lot of the banks try to achieve. And if you look at that perspective, you're only given 25.9 seconds of downtime per month. And believe it or not, they actually measure that SLA, and they actually do a lot of heroics to maintain that level of SLA. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through a lot of the 23 AI data guard features, 21C data guard features, 19C, 18C, and then we're going to go through a lot of the best practices and a lot of the automation stuff. All right. So let's start with what we call a feature called Remote Data Guard Redo Repository. So in 18C or 12.2, Oracle introduced this concept of a refreshable, pluggable database. So think about a pluggable database, just like a materialized view. It has the capability to refresh. But except in the pluggable database world, we're refreshing the entire database. So in order for that to happen, you have to put the pluggable database in mount mode. So it goes from read-only back to mount mode, and it has to go back to the primary database, fetch all the archive logs, and then has to apply the archive logs, and then has to open the database in read-only mode. So that's how refreshable, pluggable databases work. Now, what happened was that the key thing is that I have to go back to the primary and fetch all the archive logs. And so in 18C, they introduced this concept of a redo repository. So now when I am in read-only mode, archive logs will continue to propagate to a designated area in my file system. And now when if I have to refresh, all I do is read what I have from an archive log perspective, apply all of them, and go back to refresh mode. Okay, so that was introduced in 18C, but it does require the Active Data Guard license. In 23AI, we have this concept of a reconnectable, refreshable, pluggable database. Now, a pluggable database that is in a refreshable, pluggable database can now be open for read-write mode, just like what we do for a snapshot standby database. And then we can test our DR activities, and then you can reinstantiate it as a refreshable, pluggable database. So back-end data guard mode. Also, from a PDB perspective, we have this concept of multiple time zones, being able to have within a CDB, different time zones at the PDB level. Now, we have PDB level data guard in 21C, and it just gets even better in 23AI. So think about this. Think about when I have CDB1 and CDB2. And that CDB2 can be at a different data center. And I have a pluggable database that is being data guarded to CDB2 in a different data center. Now that same CDB2 at the different data center can house my PDB2 database, which is a primary, and it can propagate that to the original CDB1 in my first primary data center, and that PDB2 from the other data center now can be my standby database. And so this is where we can truly leverage both data centers from a primary and standby perspective and have different workloads and stuff like that. So then you have read-only at the PDB level in 23 AI. Also in 23 AI, we have this concept of Oracle being able to manage flashback logs outside the FRA. Remember, we always recommended two disk groups, data and FRA. And in the FRA or the recode disk group, that's where everything else went to, from an archive log, flashback log, etc. Now we have two additional initialization parameters, and also we can manage the FRA outside, flashback logs outside the FRA. And if you're on Linux now, Oracle provides you monthly level patches. The two parameters that I mentioned before is DB flashback log dest and DB flashback log dest size. And we have a new view called $V flashback log dest. And so the whole idea now is that flashback logs can be maintained outside the FRA, and so that DBAs can have better control over the flashback logs. And so a lot of customers, I happened to be one of them when I was a Fidelity National Financial employee. We enabled flashback logs, had issues with flashback logs, and we never went back. And so, and there's continuous improvement in the flashback logs, and now we have a separate mechanism to manage it now. All right, so more features in 23 AI. So now from DGMGRL, I can configure my broker, but I can do, Oracle introduces a new PL SQL API called DBMSDG. And with it, now I can go and create my configuration for Data Guard through it. With SQL CL, I can create my Data Guard configuration that way as well. And lastly, Oracle provides ORDs, REST APIs inside the database to be able to configure Data Guard. With it comes additional views. DG Guard Broker Property now has information about all of the Data Guard configuration and all of the members. And a new view called $DG Broker Role Change now has information about the last 10 role changes that happened for a particular Data Guard configuration. The database columns for FS failover is now deprecated with another view for $fast start failover config. Another really cool view is $FS lag histogram, and you can see the buckets from 0 to 5 seconds, 5 to 10 seconds. It goes all the way to 30 seconds. And now you can actually track lag if fast start failover is enabled. But remember, in one of the previous releases, Oracle introduced the capability for you to be in fast start failover only in observe only mode. And so you can be in only observe mode and see where your lag is from a redo apply perspective. And so the whole idea is to be in the apply state and understand how far behind you are from a RTO and RPO perspective. Okay, now there's a validate database command within DGMGRL, and you can say make it strict so you have better, more checks and more explanations and increased operational efficiency. Also with 23.5, there's two additional columns in $DG broker config, and it tells you if your environment is ready for role transition. So is it ready for switchover? Is it ready for failover? And it's computed by the broker every minute. The $DG broker property lists all the properties of your broker configuration with all the members. And you can see here all the properties that we have set. Also at the validate DG Connect identifier, we can look at the service name and look at all the details for it. So I did borrow a lot of these slides from Oracle. Oracle was really nice to share them with me. And so I'm able to see, provide you a lot of the 23AI new features. And so also, some of these are not 23AI. For example, the prepared database, I have slides on it from previous presentations, but the prepared database is a really cool command that will show you. Talked about PL SQL APIs for DBMS DG, SQL CL commands, additional views for Data Guard, and we'll talk about the temp files and the AWS snapshots. Here's a cool feature. Just about every vendor now talks about time travel. And so now Oracle has a feature called flashback time travel with their flashback archives. And so if you guys are familiar with flashback archives, now they extended that capability to be able to flashback and look at data and transactional changes at the table level. You can look at the DDL and DML changes that happen to all the tables, but you can go look at it at the schema level now. And so a lot of customers have flashback queries that they use and using syntax for as of and versions. But imagine if you could do that at the schema level and be able to keep your flashback to months and years and stuff like that. So right, so I mentioned earlier the prepare command. It was really a 21C feature, but because 21C is an innovative release, there aren't that many customers that went to 21C. And so even though it's a 21C new feature, but it's being adopted as a 23AI feature. So you can look at it from a DGM Jira perspective, help prepare. I can prepare a database for Data Guard. And what it does is it sets the initialization parameters, prepares the source for it, sets all the required parameters. But the key thing is that it does shut down the primary database. And so it also has been backported to 12.2. But again, like I said, most customers are going to go from 19C to 23AI. And so, but the cool thing is that now I can prepare the database for Data Guard. Fast Start Failover has a lot of new features over the different releases. And now with 21C and above, from a fast start failover perspective, not only can I validate, but there's call out scripts you can do before and after a fast start failover operation. And so, and you're wondering, why do I need fast start failover? Because Oracle RAC is, and this is the classic use case that's constantly comes back to us, is that Oracle RAC is only supported in Oracle Cloud. It's only supported, even in Oracle Cloud, it's only supported with Database Cloud Service or Exadata. And so, and that Exadata can be in the flavor of Exadata Cloud Customer, Exadata Cloud Service, and now this new Exascale. And so if you're not in Oracle Cloud and you want high availability, the recommendation is to do Data Guard, obviously. And with Data Guard, you want that failover to be automatic. And so fast start failover for cloud customers are becoming more and more popular. Okay, so continuing on, Data Guard, DBCA in 12.2, Oracle provided the feature for us to use DBCA to create a standby database. So when it first came out, it could not do RAC and it could not do multi-tenant stuff, but it did give us the capability to be able to instantiate a Data Guard environment with DBCA. And also, we do not need to set up TNS names. We can use the Easy Connect strings to be able to set up Data Guard. And here was an example on 12.2. Super straightforward. And with each release of Oracle, they enhanced it, the capability. And with DBCA now, you can do rack to rack standby database instantiation. You can go Oracle RAC as a pluggable, Oracle RAC as rack standby. You can do non-CDB to non-CDB, etc. So all the variations were enhanced in 19C. Also in 19C, Oracle introduced this concept of a DML redirection. And so what this basically is, and you could see on the slide, is read mostly standby. So now I can do DML on my active data guard. Keyword is active, so you do have to have a license for active data guard. And so I can do insert, update, and delete on my active data guard. And the way it works is that I do DML on my active, that DML is actually going back to my primary, and the primary is doing the insert, update, delete. That insert, update, delete is at commit applied, and the redo changes are being sent back to the standby, and then it's being made visible back to the client. And so you could have actually, there are ways to work around this. I do remember talking to the product managers way before this came out. And the way you kind of tricked it was you do the insert in the standby database through a database link that points to the primary, and that redo is propagated back to the standby. But now it makes it super simple. So you could do it at the session level, or you could do it at the database level. And it leverages a parameter called ADG redirect DML. We used to do a lot of labs, a lot of hands-on labs during the pandemic. And this was one of the things that we used to do. And so on the standby, we would actually set the parameter, and then we would do insert, update, deletes on it, and then go back and be able to see that data. So from a licensing perspective, there's this active data guards, what most people use for real-time query in the standby. Also, from a blockchain tracking perspective, if you want to do backups on your standby, you can leverage blockchain tracking on the standby, but that does incur the active data guard license. We also have this concept of automatic block repair, and this is when you have a corruption on your primary, a corrupted block in your primary. It will go to your standby database, fetch that corrupted block, and fix itself. I'll go over FarSync in a little bit. Global data services is another thing that customers who want that 5 nines are leveraging. And one of our biggest use cases is another debit card processing company that we work with. They have a 10-node rack on their primary. They have a 10-node rack on their standby, connected over dark fiber. And we use global data services, and present to the application a 20-node rack cluster. And so depending on the load and availability, the application may process data at either of the data centers. Real-time cascade is an active data guard feature. Application continuity, again, is an application active data guard feature. DBMS ruling. So in 11.1, Oracle introduced this concept of a transient standby database. So the physical standby can be converted temporarily or transiently to a logical data guard. And because it's logical, now you can do a near zero downtime upgrade on your primary. And so we use, but now with the newer releases, 12.1, Oracle introduced a package called DBMS rolling package. It takes all the steps that we used to have to do from a transient logical standby, simplified all of that, and introduced it as active data guard. And the future releases took DBMS rolling, put it into OEM, and made it even more simple. And so those are a lot of the engineering that's happening on the data guard side. And we just talked about active data guard. But again, if you look at active data guard DML direction, it's not available except for OCI, okay? At least at the time when it was introduced. Okay, so in 23AI, they took the DML redirection to a whole new level. And so what was in 19C was that I do an insert, that insert had to go to the primary, the redo had to be shipped to the standby, and then you can see that data. In 23 AI, we went one step further in the sense is that if that data that it's updating or inserting or deleting is not needed for consistent reads, it doesn't have to go back and wait for that reader to come back. And so with it now, you can actually do, if you look at it, went from mostly read being 5%, right? Now they're saying you can do up to 25%, which is huge from leveraging both data centers. Okay, Mira, multi-instance redo apply. When 12.2 came out, they introduced this feature called multi-instance redo apply. And it was really made for customers who have active data guard at the same data center. So one of the largest banks that they run Exadata, and right next to it is another Exadata with active data guard, and they run synchronous sync between the two data guard environments with maximum protection. And so, but the problem you have is that prior to 12.2, if you're running, let's say, a 4-node rack, only one node ever did the redo apply. And so now with 12.2, you can have 1, 2, or 3, or all apply redo. And so Mira doesn't really apply when it comes to a data guard environment over a wide area network, because your bottleneck is always going to be at the network layer. But when you have a data guard, specifically an active data guard environment at the same data center, and you're trying to do real-time reporting or near real-time reporting, it comes in really handy. And so 12.2 was when they first introduced it, but had some limitations like anything else, like blockchain tracking. You couldn't do blockchain tracking with Mira. So in 18C, they introduced blockchain tracking capabilities. And in 19C, they also made it so you can do in-memory with multi-instance redo apply. And so 19C also introduced the concept of observe-only mode with Observer, which was huge. And then being able to change your fast start failover targets. And so now you can do fast start failover in test mode to be able to really see the amount of time it takes, what's it actually doing, and look at the logs and stuff like that. Also in 19C, Oracle gave us the capability to export our data guard broker configuration and being able to import them to another environment. Also, restore points on the primary are now propagated to the standby. And these are just low-hanging fruit. So showing here, creating a restore point in primary, and you can see that the restore points are replicated. And then on the standby side, you can say, you'll actually see in the alert log that restore point underscore primary have been replicated. The same thing is for flashing back to primary. If you flash back to primary, the standby database, it will also be flashbacked as well. Additional features we mentioned earlier, flashback logs had additional capability from a management perspective. And in 23 AI, they took that to the next level by giving you 2 additional parameters and being able to manage flashback logs outside the SRA even. Okay, 18C provided us the capability of switchover at the PDB level. And so PDB was introduced in 12.1. And so in 12.1, it was the entire container had to switch over. In 12.2, you can do a switchover, but you couldn't fail back. And so now in 18C, it will give us per PDB switchover capabilities. And look at how the syntax is, right? Alter pluggable database, refresh mode every 2 minutes from database switchover. So it's not our traditional switchover syntax that we're used to. And so the switchover capability can be done from at the PDB level now in 18C. And the redo repository is also, I mentioned this earlier in the previous slide. Now, if you look at the refreshable PDB switchover, if you look at the columns, right, EE is Enterprise Edition, and EEES is Engineering Systems. And so the refreshable PDB switchover, at least as of now, is only for Engineering Systems. There's also another concept called a snapshot carousel. And again, if you look at, unless Oracle has changed these options, it's only available at the Exadata or Engineering Systems level. And so the snapshot carousel is when you have refreshable pluggable databases. Remember, at the PDB level, I can do thin clones now, as long as your file systems supports thin provisioning. With a single command, I can thin provision another pluggable database. Well, what a snapshot carousel is that Oracle now maintains, at least at the time of this release, only maintains 7 snapshots, 1 for every day. And so you're able to go back in history and go back to the snapshots and refresh and create another snapshot from it as well. And so the whole PDB snapshots is a whole separate topic. I'm actually trying to work with product management, because PDB adoption is a requirement after 19C, but if you look at most of the customers today, they are leveraging pluggable databases only because Oracle is making it a requirement. But within PDBs, there's so many features in PDBs that people are not aware of. And Oracle used to evangelize that a lot, but now it's become one of those things where I'm telling Oracle that, we need to go and start evangelizing the features of PDB, because as you go to 23 AI, a lot of customers will really benefit from the PDB side. All right, so in 12.2, Oracle introduced the concept where you can be no logging on the primary. And on the standby side, I can say, recover my non-log blocks. So that was a 12.2 feature. And in 18C, Oracle introduced 2 modes for no logging. It does require the active data guard. They made that really clear. And now they made it even more clear that it's only available on Engineering Systems. But you can have your primary be literally in no logging mode. And you can say, I can be in no logging mode, but for low performance. So basically, the data availability is your typical equivalent to forced logging. But when I'm saying no logging for low performance, is literally the standby receives non-log blocks. So without it, basically, we'll report it as a curl block. But the managed recovery process will go back to the primary, fetch all the correct blocks, and fix whatever it needs to fix on the standby. And so, especially in data warehouses, not a lot of customers, but a few of the customers that we know have data warehouse environments in non-forced logging mode, and they have few table spaces that are in non-logging mode, and they'll do, SQL loader, they'll do create table as, create indexes, unrecoverable. And so, but now you can actually go tell the standby to go make it and fix all the data. And again, if you look at the data guard automatic correction of non-log blocks, it's only available in the Engineering Systems. Let's look at the evolution of data guard. I used to do a lot of scripting in Perl back in the 7.3 days. And in fact, I used to do a lot of presentations at that time, comparing hot standby with SharePlex to updatable snapshots and that kind of stuff. But as it evolved in 8i, we have the read-only physical standby, the managed recovery. Like I said, 9.2 got really popular with logical standby and the broker. And then we have 10G real-time apply, fast start failover, and you have 11G active data guard. And I think a lot of people started to leverage active data guard for real-time reporting. snapshot standby is a must for any kind of DR testing. We have a lot of our financial customers, we do quarterly or every 6 months DR testing, and we do put the database on snapshot standby mode, and we do all gamuts of testing, and we put it back into Data Guard mode. We have a few customers where we literally will switch over every 6 months or so. The rolling transient upgrade, that's what I was talking about earlier. You put the standby database in a transient standby where it converts to a logical, and you can do a database upgrade. Keyword is database upgrade. You can go from, in that case, 19C to 23 AI. But the steps are tedious, and there's a lot of potential for errors. Okay, so we have this concept of a far sync and a fast sync, and I do have slides later on to talk about it. The far sync is a far sync instance, and the keyword is instance, not a database. And so that's a lot of the DBA interview questions would be like, what is the difference between an instance and a database? So a far sync instance is the background processes, the control files, and it's literally its sole purpose in life is to propagate archive logs from source to destination in the form of a redo route. Now, fast sync is where you have this concept of the log writer from the primary database talks to the RFS process. The log writer talks to a process called NSS, and talks to a process on the standby database. And the RFS process writes to the standby redo logs, right? And so when the RFS process writes to the standby redo logs, has to send an acknowledgement back. And when we have fast sync, we're actually eliminating all physical I/O. So when the NSS process ships the redo from the log writer to the RFS process says, I got it, and this just sends it back. So literally there is no write to the standby redo logs. And that's what fast sync is about. It's eliminating the any kind of physical I/O. Okay. So going back to 12.101, introduced a role called SysDG. Oracle wants customers out of the SysDBA role. They want everything from a data guard to happen with a SysDG role. And in 12.1 also, if you have Active Data Guard, Oracle gave us the capability to leverage sequences on the standby database. And so the sequences have to be defined on the primary, but you can actually do a next val on the standby database. And you're wondering, why is that important? It was mainly the use case that we used was customers have a lot of PL SQL packages that they used to do reports out of. And Crystal Report was one of the key examples, but a lot of customers also had PL SQL, and they would do next vals, and they would actually go and build a report and stuff like that off of it. And so this was the first iteration of that, being able to do sequence iterations on the standby database. The rules for it are very similar to RAC in the sense that sequences have to be defined with cache and no order. Also, in 12.1, Oracle provided the capability so that if you do an alter database move data file, it doesn't impact the standby anymore. Also, if with Active Data Guard, you can do DML in 12.1 on temp tables. And so you can see Oracle's evolution of all their products. 12.1 also introduced a capable but resumable switchover. If your switchover failed, you just fix whatever caused the failure. You could tell it to resume the switchover. The syntax for current log for real-time apply now became standard. We can do incremental updates over TNS from the standby database. What does that mean? What that basically means is that when a classical misconception was that if I lose archive logs, that I must rebuild my standby database, which is a complete misconception. So even if I'm missing archive logs, I can go and get my SCN from my standby, and go to my primary and take a backup as of that SCN, take the backup with the snapshot control file, or the standby control file. I can go to my standby database and apply that backup so that I can go through all the missing archive logs and then reinstantiate DataGuard. Okay, so this incremental update over TNS is that so that I don't have to go do all the manual steps of going back to the primary, taking a backup, and now I can go over TNS and tell it to go and do the incremental update over TNS. And so you would do this for a couple of conditions. One would be if I'm missing archive logs, and another one would be is for example, if you have days and days and days of archive logs to apply, it's better to just take an incremental and then apply that. Okay. And so FARSync, we talked about FARSync earlier, but basically think about a FARSync instance. A FARSync instance is at the same data center, and I do a synchronous replication to my FARSync instance, and I can go over async to anywhere in the world. So it's all about zero data loss, but it's zero data loss in the sense of at the data center level. Now, if I lost my data center, that's a whole different story. But in the absence of a data loss without it, meaning that zero data loss from a storage failure, CPU failure, hardware failure, et cetera, network failure, I can be synchronous and replicate anywhere in the world. And so when we set up a FARSync instance and we architect it, some companies go through the heroics of making the FARSync instance on a different storage, on a different subnet, et cetera, to get that level of zero data loss. So we had an Exadata customer with 50 so Exadatas. We set up FARSync instance server, and we set up all the FARSync data replication to be able to achieve it so that they can move from one data center to another data center seamlessly. So FARSync is, like I said, synchronous at the local data center and async with compression over the wide area network to anywhere in the world. We talked about sysdg, and these are all the permissions for the sysdg role. FARSync, this is just an example, won't go through it, but it's all about redo routes. Right, DataGuard 12.2 features. One of the biggest ones in 12.2 was a multiple observer. So basically, prior to 12.2, you can only have one observer process. Well, guess what? With a one observer process, if you lost that node, it became your single point of failure. Now you can have up to 3 observer process. Now the other 2 observer processes don't do anything. It's just an active failover capability. If the observer process dies, the main one of the surviving observer processes will pick up. Right. So now you can run fast start failover in max protection mode. We talked about in memory at the active data guard level with a 12.2 feature. Basically, a lot of the stuff we're talking about AWR at the data guard, tuning pack, and SQL plan analyzer. What happened was that when especially at the PDB level, we had new features. When PDBs came out, things like AWR and stuff like that you couldn't do that at the PDB level. The same thing was with Active Data Guard 2. You couldn't do diagnostic pack until 12.2. There's a lot of customers from 12.1. They were suffering because they couldn't run a lot of the features. But now after 12.2, Active Data Guard, you can actually run full AWRs, just like that. And so 12.2 OEM got support for database rolling upgrades with DBMS rolling. Remember, it was command line until then. Now you got OEM. And then also with 12.2, we have the capability to do draining sessions. 12.2 also, like I mentioned before, can create standby with DBCA, multi-instance redo apply, subsetting at the standby at the PDB level. Password automatic sync is a big one. This is My next slides are my top 10 failures of Data Guard. Part of 12.2, if you change the sysdba password, guess what? If you forget to propagate that, it will cause Data Guard to stop working. And so things like that. Now I can do a duplicate database for FarSync. And another one was Data Guard broker scripts. Just like you can do in SQL Plus, a lot of the echoes, a lot of the commands that you would do with SQL Plus for scripting, now you could do in Data Guard 12.2. Okay, so top common failures that I see in the industry is that, again, removal of archive logs. People think that you have to rebuild the standby database, but it does happen that people, junior DBAs or whatnot, will remove an archive log before it's applied on the primary database by accident. Another area that we see is when you have a rack database, and they forget the plus sign, alter database, add data file, plus data. They forget the plus sign. Guess where that data file goes? It goes to Oracle Home DBS on that node. And so it causes other issues on the rack, but also has issues on Data Guard as well. When the primary database file system or ASM disk group runs out of space, causes Data Guard failures, but also when people are monitoring, they'll monitor the primary, but they forget to monitor the Data Guard side. There's a parameter called DB recovery file desk size. And this is an argument, this becomes more of a religious argument than anything else, is that I always tell our consultants to set that to be the size of the ASM disk group. Instead of saying, if I have 10 databases against a disk group, allocating 500 gigs, 200 gigs, 1 terabyte. If the disk group is 50 terabytes, make that 50 terabytes. Don't cause a self-inflicted outage. And this is one thing I never understood is the standby file management. Why it's manual? Because instead of being auto, because what happens is that if you set it to manual or by default, you create a data file in the primary, and the DR side it goes to and it creates a data file called unnamed data file. Obviously, applying patches is a big part, PSU or RUs. I always tell customers N-1. We talked about not monitoring the standby database. Another one is they forget to start the MRP process, auto start after a node reboot or an outage. SysDBA, we mentioned before, after 12.2, this is no longer an issue. Another big one is a lot of DBAs will use broker, DGMGRL to modify changes as well as setting alter system changes. I used to get a lot of calls from friends who will say, hey, my data guard's not replicating or it's not working anymore. And then you will go through the scenario and I find out in the logs that it's because they did alter system. And then I literally tell them, send me your broker, send me your init, or send me your SP file. I'll just literally do the strings on it, do a diff, and I'll send them the alter system command to fix it so data guard will resume. So another big one is to consider is taking guaranteed restore points for any maintenance task. And then always monitor for no logging, right? So to bulletproof your data guard, I know this is what everyone's talking about. Always monitor your alert logs on primary and standby. Monitor archive gaps or deviances. The biggest one to monitor is transport lag. And this is where you're going to be looking for, can I meet my RPO and RTO? Now, if you have an apply lag, it typically means that your standby, there's something wrong with your standby database infrastructure, meaning that if you're suffering with it not being able to apply in a timely manner, you've got hardware issues or disk issues. In 21C, Oracle introduced a new file called attention logs. And this is all about less noise. It is a JSON file, but you can definitely monitor this starting in 21C because it's only going to have the critical alerts. Okay. Proactively always monitor the file system, always monitor the disk group, always monitor DB recovery file desks and for the size. OEM is the flagship monitoring for Oracle. best practice is to leverage OEM for monitoring data guard as well. But remember, with OEM, you must use a broker. A lot of the old-time DBAs don't like the broker still, but broker is the standard. Learn to embrace the broker. And with OEM, you can start managing a lot of your stuff. Definitely participate in quarterly or annual, biannual DR testing. OEM is now at 24 AI. And with OEM, once you set up Data Guard with OEM to be monitored, you get the Data Guard status, you get the apply lag, you get lots of nice GUI screens for charts. And then obviously, you could even do role transitions with OEM. My only thing with OEM for role transitions is that know how to fix your Data Guard before you do it, because we've had issues with not being able to fill back after a switchover, right? Monitor the alert like I mentioned before, MRP, lags, and the next set of screens. I'm not going to bore you to death with it, but we use Perl scripts. We use Perl and shell scripts, but I like Perl because I can go to my alert log, scan for or dash messages, and and put a record locator, line locator in a file somewhere, so that the next time I scan the alert log, I start from that line to the end of the file and propagate, go forward, right? So it doesn't matter how big my alert log is in this case, and I can just go and propagate that way. And so the whole idea is, from a monitoring perspective, we look at the OR tab. We even have an ignore list, because there's some OR dash error messages you don't care for, and so we can actually ignore some of that. So a lot of DBAs I've seen will compare. They'll actually go and make a copy of the alert log, and then look at the new version of it, do a diff, and look for error messages, and save off the old copy, et cetera, et cetera. But I found that Perl to be significantly more efficient. And then the whole idea is to send alerts based on certain OR dash error conditions. And also, log rotate's another big one too, is that when your OR alert log gets big and it gets too big, you want it to rotate. And so in this case, a lot of people think the log rotates for root access only, but you can use it as DBAs as well. In this example is to say, it says to rotate the logs, keep 4 copies, add the data extensions, copy truncated, compress it, and only do it if it hits 100 megs. And so monitoring the MRP, look at VDOT automatic standby, monitoring transport apply lag, there's a view called VDOT Data Guard stats, monitoring apply lag, VDOT recovery progress, and then if you want a copy of the scripts, feel free to ask Monica for them, and we'll be more than happy to send you. Now, there's this thing called bandwidth delay product. And basically what it is that it's a formula that talks about bandwidth times latency times 3. And so latency is calculated by simply with a ping command. You can use, for example, you can say ping C-C, basically saying send 2 packets, and specify the dash S option to give it a packet size that's more representative of the data size you're looking at, and then it'll tell you what the latency is, right? You take that latency, look at the bandwidth, in this case OC3, for example, and you multiply that by 3, and that gives you the formula that you need to set your send and receive buffer size. The whole idea is do less round trips with bigger packets. And it's all about, calculating the latency with round trip time that you want. And because in a environment that has that very noisy, very chatty environments, right? It has to go back and forth, and you have performance issues. And so with it also, you want to set your send buff side, receive side on Oracle, but also your RMEM and WMEM on your data guard as well. I mean, on your Linux as well, sorry. Okay, FRA best practices. We want to make sure that we set the log archive des1 to be the location of the des file. So we want to be able to protect ourselves from human error. And this is where flashback retention target comes from. And this is where you want to be able to flash back the database if you need to. Also, you also want to set it for flashback retention as well, reinstantiation as well. So basically, another misconception people have is that if I fail over, I must rebuild my primary. Well, with flashback logs, and this is the reason why we want to set our flashback database to a specific retention to a specific number, is because if I have to fail over to my standby database, remember there's a difference between switchover and failover. Switchover is no data loss. A failover is potential data loss. And so let's say I haven't had a data loss of 30 minutes, right? So at that point, I can grab the SCN of my standby database, go to the primary and say, flashback that database of that SCN. And then I can establish data guard, and then my archive logs will ship, and I'll get my primary to be in sync again with my standby. And so we can do a lot with flashback logs. Block change tracking, you should always, it's a no-brainer. Everyone should be doing block change tracking. But if you want to do block change tracking on the standby, does incur the active data guard. But a lot of customers want to offload their backups to standby. So this could be really big for some of the customers. Again, it's active data guard license use. We went through this before. Standby redo logs. We multiplex our redos, but we don't want to multiplex our standby redo logs. That's number one. Number two, number of SRLs, standby redo logs, is number of ORLs, online redo logs, plus 1 times the number of threads. Okay, so perfect example is a 2-node rack. If I have 5 redo logs, it's 5 plus 1 times 2 for 2 nodes, so I have to have 12 SRLs. And so I have a script that will actually do all this for you. In fact, now the prepared database database command that I showed you earlier does all this for you as well. Best practice, always enable forced logging at the database level. And if you have certain requirements, because, for example, data warehouse, make sure you check forced logging at the table space level. I have scripts for you that I can share with you as well. Always know your archive generation rate. So as you can see, on February 23rd, highlighted in red, I'm generating way too many archive logs. Number one, I need to increase my archive logs, my redo log sizes, but at the same time, you need to know if you're going to be able to meet your RTO and RPO. So a lot of customers, when they run big batch jobs at night, and let's say they have a 2-hour RPO RTO, well, if my redo logs, if my archive logs can't get to my DR site fast enough within the 2-hour or 4-hour window, I've violated my RPO. RPO is how much data loss can I have, and RTO is how much time do I have to have my DR site up and running. And so understanding RPO and RTO is crucial, and this is the script that gives you your archive generation rates. I know I'm running super late. Let me see questions here before I continue. I do have 8 questions here. All right. All right, so let me stop here and answer questions before we continue. First question is, can a manual switchover not using the broker be quicker when every second counts? At the end of the day, it's when we have this concept of draining sessions. And so when you're doing a switchover, it's more about the draining the sessions that matter than is SQL Plus faster than the broker. And so that's and if you want to, for example, kill all the sessions manually, that could even be faster. And so when it comes to doing, and you said the keyword was switchover, right? So when we prepare a switchover, typically you want to do a switchover when it's a quiet time in the weekend, for example, right? So another question, is there a way to flashback standby database to sync with a primary database when the primary database is in time travel? different date, current date, flashback. You can flashback anything as long as you have flashback logs, right? Another thing is that guaranteed restore points. Another misconception people have is that you got to be in flashback logging for GRPs. GRP is only at the archive logs level. And so you don't need to be in flashback log mode at all. But the bad thing is that when you're in guaranteed restore point mode, it's going to keep all the archive logs. So you can flash back to it. Is this old graphical interface gone? Or we record? Oh, so I think that's more in terms of DBCA. DBCA is still there. DBMS ruling has data type restriction. Will those restrictions, DBMS ruling? The problem with DBMS ruling is just like the logical standby. And I don't know if that's ever going to go away because of the, and the same concept happens with Golden Gate, SharePlex, Attunity, right? Is that there's certain data types that it has restrictions with. And so when you're in logical standby, you have the same level of restriction. Restore point propagation does not work when primary database is time travel. Okay, let's go here. Refreshable PDB does not work with large databases due to bugs. Yeah, we had issues with large databases too. I think it's more in terms of we had issues before, but the newer releases of Oracle and newer patches have definitely helped. And so we had big issues too when we were one of the first people doing this with a client. But over the years, it's gotten a lot better. Okay, Kevin talks about with on observability and monitoring with on-prem deployment. Suppose you don't have OEM or other commercial products. What are the recommended ways for observability? Okay, again, scripting is the best way for me, at least. And we'll be more than happy to share with you our monitoring scripts. Do you have automation, application, data guard? We do. And so here's something else too. And let's see here. We have, I know I'm over and I apologize, but from a slide deck perspective, let me see if I can fast forward the slides here. See all the slides. I apologize that I'm going to go skip quite a bit, and I'm going to show you our scripts right here. And so as part of the DG toolkit that I mentioned before, is I wrote this entire thing in shell scripts, right? So we have the capability to set up, to check the primary environment before, and to build the standby database, to build a data guard broker, and monitor logical. Logical was a big part of our data guard book when we wrote it, because I worked with a product manager for physical standby and logical standby. And so we had a chapter on logical, so we included logical standby in our menu. The ADR repository management was another big part. The RMN was another big part. And so remember I told you earlier, RMN backup primary based on standby SCN and recover standby SCN. So the menus that I have, you can see the shell scripts. It doesn't really do anything except build a script so you can look at and run yourself. And so, but we do have this available for customers. And so, and I apologize for running long, and I think that answers all the questions. Feel free to reach out, and thank you for joining. And thank you everyone for being a member of New York Oracle User Group.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Charles. And thank you for everyone who was able to stay over the hour. We've still got a lot of folks in here, so that's great. I'm going to assume that means you love the content, so let me know if you have any questions after this. I will try to find, I think there's a landing page we have where you can sign up and get some scripts and stuff from Charles. So I'll look for that and share it if I do find it. But otherwise, thank you guys so much. Remember, you can find the recording of today's webinar at nyoug.org or at at orapub.com. So we'll, hello to our little guest. We will send you guys all a follow-up email once everything's posted, so be on the lookout for that. And we hope to see you guys soon on one of our next webinars. And until then, I hope you guys have a great day and a great week. Take care.
Well, and you know, one more thing.
Oh,
If
sure.
people are interested in doing this as a 2-hour or even a 4-hour webinar, let us know. That'd be interesting for us
Sure.
to have as well.
Yeah, we can definitely
There's so much content to cover, you know?
Definitely. Definitely. We got a little peek at your slides. Okay, everyone. So take care. And yes, as Charles said, let me know if anything like that interests you so we can kind of gauge demand for that. But I think we can easily put together maybe a 2-hour, 2-day deep dive for you guys. All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.